should be licking their chops here, especially against a Cowboy team that is missing major weapons offensively. I like the Patriots in this one.
I actually like the Patriots in this one, too, but let's not forget, Greg Hardy is coming back this week. A human being that I don't want to get too much into, but believe me, not my favorite person, but the guy undeniably can rush the passer. And you got McClain back, too. This is going to be where the offensive line for the Patriots going to have to do a really good job protecting Brady's blind side, especially Nate Solter's got to do that job. I still like the Patriots in this one. You got to go with Gronk and company.
Yep.
All right. Now the Packers at home being visited by the Rams. Packers looking to go for their 11th consecutive home victory against this defense that...
Really interesting matchup here in that you have a Packers squad that's obviously 10 times better than their opponents going up against a Rams team that so far has one signature victory for themselves.
Actually,
two signature victories going for themselves.
They beat the Seahawks week 1, 34-31, and they beat their other division rivals, the Cardinals, 24-22 last week. They've had 2 victories, and yet they have 2 losses, unfortunately, especially on the road against Washington. But nonetheless, this Rams team with Tavon Austin and Todd Gurley on offense, unbelievable. Nick Foles actually woke up last week.
Technically, the Rams have the better running game because they've got the better two-headed combo. But don't underestimate the Packers' running game as well. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers is 10 times better than Nick Foles at quarterback. Green Bay all the way.
He hasn't had an interception home in 574 attempts.
There you go.
He hasn't had an interception since 2012.
That is a guy who has...
At home.
Yeah, at home. That's a guy who knows his surroundings really, really well.
Yeah, cheeseheads all the way, Packers indeed. Okay, the Queen City Bengals of Cincinnati being visited by the Seahawks.
Another interesting matchup right there. A Seahawks team, obviously with the better quarterback, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Marshawn Lynch is going to be missing this game, isn't he?
I think, yeah, another week without him. This has been a strange season not seeing him on the field with his team. You know, you got this kid, Thomas Rawls, the undrafted rookie out of Central Michigan. Not a bad player for sure, you know, for certain. I think he'll do fine, but honestly, this Bengals team has been firing on all cylinders, especially offensively with Jeremy Hill last week. He had 3 touchdowns inside the red zone. Andy Dalton has just... He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks besides Ryan Fitzpatrick in the league, so that's a product of a great offensive line. And overall, A.J. Green, his matchup, you're not going to see him on the right lined up with Richard Sherman. It's going to be whoever is on the left side of the cornerback situation for Seattle. And because of that, I'm going with the Bengals.
There you go.
Okay, the next game right here, Monday Night Football. The best traveled fans in all football, the Steelers, are going to be visiting the San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, a matchup of 2 of the best quarterbacks in the game.
Well,
isn't Big Ben going to be missing the game?
Yeah, he's still out this week.
Yeah. Well, if Big Ben were in this game, then it would be a whole different matter. But exactly what can the Steelers do in order to complement the loss of Big Ben? Do they go to their running game? My guess is they probably pound this one on the ground.
Oh, without a doubt. They have to get Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams going. They got to set the tone and take the crowd of San Diego out of the game. Vic cannot make any of the mistakes, especially last week on 4th down. You know, that he has to control, and he's got to do better running his legs. He may not have the same legs he had, say, when he was with Atlanta.
Yeah.
Those are unbelievable legs right there. This time around, it's not the same with Vic, you know. And I really hope that the defense will be able to hold Phil Rivers in charge. But I think Melvin Gordon's going to have a big day. I'm going with the Chargers.
Yeah, I like the Chargers in this one, although Michael Vick is still dangerous enough where he can make plays with his feet. Although, by the same token, do you know Michael Vick has thrown more than completed more than 60% of his passes once in his entire career?
That's really sad.
He's a 58 to 59% passer for his career. You can't have your quarterback win games by completing just 58 or 59%. That's why I like San Diego in this one.
We got the Birds, the Arizona Cardinals, facing the Detroit Lions in the Motor City. It's a 4 o'clock afternoon game.
And I like Arizona in this one. Detroit is horrible.
Detroit, if they lose this game, it'll be reminiscent of their infamous 08 year where they were 0-16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But the thing is, I'm actually going Lions. I think there's upset right here. They really are feeling the frustration of last week's game with that call. I think that's really going to burn inside them. I think they're going to try and avoid yet another disappointment at home. I think this is going to be another letdown for the Cardinals, despite the resurgence of Larry Fitzgerald, despite the fact that their quarterback Carson Palmer is having an good season. But I smell a great matchup with Golden Tate and Patrick Peterson, and even it's Megatron. Yeah, Cardinals all the way in that one. Now, Lions, I mean. Now, the Redskins visiting the hot Atlanta Falcons. They're still going to stay hot. Come on. This Kirk Cousins is terrible in his career in his one start he had against the Falcons back in December 2013.
Whereas the Falcons are loaded offensively with Matt Ryan and Roddy White.
Julio Jones
also, and a very underrated running game, too.
Well, Devonta Freeman, like I said, he's had 6 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 games in place of Tevin Coleman, the rookie out of Indiana, who's been injured, unfortunately, with the hip and a rib injury. And then you look at Leonard Hankerson. Last week, he had over 100 yards receiving. Julio Jones didn't even have that last week, breaking his streak of 3 straight. But nonetheless... Yeah, hot Atlanta, come on.
Hot Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, the ATL is burning up in this piece.
Yeah, let's see how much longer they can burn, though.
All right, the next game right here, we got the Chicago Bears visiting the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. This one to me is not even a question. I'm going with Jamal Charles and the Kansas City Chiefs to finally break the dry spell they've had since week 1 against Houston. They are going to take this game. The defense, especially Justin Houston, is going to get a few sacks on Jay Cutler.
Alex Smith is good, not great. Jay Cutler is talented, but incompetent. I'll take Alex Smith over Jay Cutler as my quarterback any day, any game.
So you're going Chiefs.
I like the Chiefs as well, and I also don't think that the Bears match up well with the Chiefs' running game at all.
I know, and you can't put everything on Matt Forte. Even though he's a great all-around player. And they still are missing Alshon Jeffrey. I hope he plays this week. I like to see what he can do.
Speaking of hope, there's a lot of hope for the fans of each of these teams, the Saints and Eagles. The Saints coming off a real emotional win at home against the Cowboys. The Eagles coming off an embarrassing loss on the road to the Skins. A pair of one-win teams that are so desperate to try and get that second win. I'm picking New Orleans in this one. Their quarterback is just better.
Well, man, you must have read my mind because I'm going with the Saints, too. Yes, in this week, Darren Sproles, though, he's going up against his former squad that traded him back in 2014. There could be a bit of a storyline revenge right there. But in the end, I think Drew Brees and company are really going to take down that secondary that was porous last week.
Sproles has been really not given a fair shake by the couple of teams that he's played for in the past. Not just the Eagles, but the team that originally drafted him, the Chargers. Now he's really making a name for himself with the Saints.
And with the Eagles, Darren Sproles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially the game against the Jets. Anyway, you got the AFC West rivalry matchup. Broncos, Raiders. This is not even this is an easy decision. In fact, I'm going with the Broncos to win this one.
I'm going with the Broncos as well. The Raiders coming off an embarrassing loss where they became the first victims of the Bears. And you are right. Darren Sproles was a former Saint who's now a current Eagle. But at the same time, Denver's just better. I mean, who would you rather have as your quarterback, Peyton Manning or Derek Carr, who's in his second NFL season? The Raiders are much improved. Don't get me wrong.
Improved defensively. They got the most sacks in the NFL, 18. They're tied for the second most takeaways. They're fifth in turnover differential. Mm-hmm. And DeMarcus Ware leads the league with 4.5 sacks. So their defense has had fourth quarter turnovers in every single game this year.
And if the Raiders are going to try and make a game of this, blitz Peyton Manning at all costs. Fluster him, get some hits on him, and throw him off his game. I still like Denver in this one.
Yeah, Denver definitely is. And not only that, the running game last week, Ronnie Hillman had a 72-yard touchdown run. And C.J. Anderson. They got a great combo. Did you know that C.J. Anderson started in Snoop Dogg's football league?
That's right.
So right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got remember the Miracle in Music City that took
Oh,
place in 99?
yes. That was also the very last playoff game that the Buffalo Bills played in 15, coming up on 16 years ago.
Now they got to go to Music City to take on the Tennessee Titans.
Well, obviously, the players are different from that last meeting 15 years ago. In this case, the Bills are better, and that's why I'm picking Buffalo.
I'm actually going with the Titans. They week 3 when they played their last game against Indianapolis, they lost by 2 points, 35-33 to the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
They could have had a chance. They actually had a lead in that game. They blew, and they blew a chance to tie the game with that 2-point conversion.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Mariota in this first game had 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
Then afterwards, he's had some up and down games, especially week 3 against Indianapolis. I really think that the Tennessee Titans this week are really going to have an amazing game. And they're getting Chance Warmack back in the offensive line. That's
Yep.
a plus right there. And they're going up against a Buffalo Bills team that's really going to be severely missing several offensive players.
Yeah.
McCoy is out indefinitely with his hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out Carlos Williams, the guy who's been their stalwart in McCoy's place, he's out this week with a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
And Sammy Watkins is questionable.
Yep.
So right there, they had to sign Dan Boom Herron to be the next running back. They passed on Trent Richardson, and for good reason.
Does that name sound familiar? Trent Richardson? Lost cause for a quarterback. And you also consider the matchup at quarterback. Marcus Mariota, whose career has nowhere to go but up, I think, and Tyrod Taylor, who basically showed he's not as great as people think he is after a couple of wins. In fact, I'm changing my pick on this one. It's Tennessee here.
Definitely.
First time I've ever changed my pick here.
That's all right. And you know what? Last week, did you see on that potential touchdown play how late Tyrod Taylor was throwing the ball on the right side of the field?
Yeah.
You got to get those passes out quickly, especially when you got a good angle for your receiver to get into the end zone. Yeah, definitely Tennessee's got this. Now, the next game right here, we got the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens.
Yep.
AFC North rivalry, and honestly, despite the fact that McCown had a not too bad performance last week, and Travis Benjamin has really been the main star of their offense, and the fact that Baltimore is missing out on several wide receivers.
Yeah. Joe Flacco is still the quarterback, though, and he's done so many amazing things. He's won a lot of games, big games in his career. This division rivalry is no exception. I like Baltimore in this one.
Actually, I'm going Cleveland this week.
Interesting.
Yes, I think Travis Benjamin and company, actually, despite the fact with the losses, they're better equipped really at receiver than the Ravens are. Rashard Perriman has yet to play a game at UCF. Steve Smith may not even play this week.
Mm-hmm.
The injuries right there are going to be too much, and it's going to be too much for Justin Forsett to put the game on his shoulders.
Right,
and I think the run defense, unfortunately, they have a porous run defense. Maybe Forsett could have a big day, but I think they're going to improve in this week. So I'm going with the Browns and that offensive line and McCown to have a good day.
Now a game for the diehards, Jaguars and Buccaneers in another Sunshine State showdown. You have two young quarterbacks who I'm still holding out a little bit of hope for. Blake Bortles for the Jaguars and one Jameis Winston for the Buccaneers. Oh, wait a minute. The flags aren't even showing right now.
Oh, sorry.
I wouldn't be surprised if the game ends in a tie, to be honest with you. But just because we're forced to try and make a pick here, the finger points to the Buccaneers.
Well, my finger points to the Jaguars. That's right, folks. I'm going with another upset, interesting pick. I'm going with Jacksonville this week. My reason being, despite some of the issues they've had with the offensive line, but they did get a signature victory this year against Miami. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget that. I think Blake Bortles has a good future on his hands. I think T.J. Yeldon is going to have a big game this week against that Tampa Bay defense, and Jameis Winston's You know, he's in that freshman season, 52% completion, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in his first 3 games. You know, honestly, and he had 4 picks, you know, this year. One that was returned for a score last week against Carolina. I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm going with Jacksonville this week. I like the pick right there. And let me go get my flag that I flipped over accidentally. Now that's it for week 5 NFL. Let's go into week 6
of college football.
Starting with an SEC battle at Rocky Top. You got the Georgia Bulldogs coming off an embarrassing loss at home against Alabama, now heading to take on the Volunteers, who have been embarrassing themselves in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately. So much for the promising start that they had. This has Georgia written all over it. I think they take their frustrations out on the Vols in front of 100,000 fans down in Knoxville.
Oh, without a doubt. Nick Chubb, the only consolation he had last week, he has 13th consecutive 100-yard game. He broke Herschel Walker's record a few weeks back. Doesn't make up for the fact that he got killed by Alabama. But, yeah, they got this week. Now, the next game we got coming up, another SEC clash right here in the West Division. The Arkansas Razorbacks coming off a big victory, against Tennessee, going up to the Roll Tide in Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide of Alabama.
Yep, and this is an Alabama win all the way. I think they've got a little bit too much offensive firepower for Arkansas's defense here.
Yeah, but you know what? They got 2 good running backs in Raleigh Williams and Alex Collins. Both had over 100 yards last week in defeating Tennessee. But then you got Derrick Henry, who last week had a career-high 26 carries of 148 yards against Georgia. I'm still going with the Roll Tide, though.
Yep.
Next game right here, ACC battle at Death Valley.
Yep, Georgia Tech and Clemson in a game that might very well decide who represents one of the opponents in the ACC championship game that's going to be taking place in December. Clemson coming off a huge win at home against Notre Dame last weekend.
24-22.
Yep, and Georgia Tech off to a really good start this season.
Well, actually, they've lost 3 in a row. They're 2-3 on the year. They're 0-2 in the division.
I stand corrected.
But you know what? Overall, it's because of the fact their triple option offense had a lot of steam in the beginning. They had 15 rushing touchdowns in the first 2 weeks. Since 5, they've been forced to throw 20 or more pass attempts. When you do that to Georgia Tech, they are terrible. They have to run the ball very well in this offense in order for the triple option to work. And honestly, the Clemson defense did a great job last week. They in the beginning when they were up 21-23, but they did a great job in the end stopping that potential 2-point conversion play with just 7 seconds to go. Yeah, I got Clemson.
Yeah, I have Clemson also. And then in the Big 12, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. West Virginia having their heads handed to them by the other team from Oklahoma, which is the Sooners, and Oklahoma State trying to make a real push for the Big 12 title this year. This is a must-win for the Mountaineers, considering the game is at home.
Yeah, well, they're going up against a defense that leads FBS with 22 sacks and 51 tackles for loss. And in the last 2 games, Ben Grogan has been their savior as their place kicker. But West Virginia with Skylar Howard, he's been sacked 13 times. And I think this week, honestly, Oklahoma State's going to have a field day with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had 5 turnovers last week. He had 3 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles on top of it. Yeah, West Virginia gets killed in Morgantown.
Yep. And now the Red River Classic, a game which just has not been the same since way back in the day. Oklahoma and Texas in a game that's going to be played in the Cotton Bowl. Texas, wow. Who saw the fall from grace from the Longhorns ever since they replaced Mac Brown with Charlie Strong? I'm telling you, this is going to get ugly really quickly. I think Oklahoma wins by at least a couple touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. Last week, the 2 losses, they've had several losses. They got destroyed week 1 against Notre Dame 34-3. Then last week, they got murdered by TCU 50-7. Can I say that again? 50-7. And this takes place, this game, which coincides with the Texas State Fair.
Yep.
All the bad things that you love it, like fried bacon, fried Coke, and Zeppelis and cotton candy and apples and having all the carnival rides. That's fun.
It's one big heart attack is what it is. Fried food all over the place.
But yet it's a fun day for the family and the kids, and also for the football fans that are Sooner fans, that is.
Yep.
Not the Longhorn fans. They're 1-4. It's the worst start they've had since the 50s. Yeah, I'm going with the Sooners. This is embarrassing. Baker Mayfield, that air raid, wow, look out. Now,
Florida and Missouri coming up.
Me, as a Florida fan, last week, they were at home against Ole Miss. They beat them 38-10. Will Greer in the first half, 4 touchdowns. First time that any quarterback has done that since Chris Leak for the Gators in 2005. He was 24-29. He's completed 67% of his passes. And yet they're going up against a Missouri team that did get a victory against South Carolina, but with new quarterback Drew Lock. Because Matty Mock suspended indefinitely.
There you go. And it's going to be all Florida in this one. Speaking of Florida.
I'm going with Florida, too.
Yep. Speaking of Florida, the latest edition of the Miami versus Florida State rivalry. It's a primetime game being held up in Tallahassee.
Doak Campbell Stadium.
Florida State is just, they're not great because they've actually stumbled in a couple of games this year before coming away with close victories. But still, with Everett Golson, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Everett Golson get hurt in his last game?
Well, he's all right. It actually was Dalvin Cook who got hurt.
Dalvin Cook was the one that wound up getting hurt.
So we don't know if he's going to be able to play because he's been a big source of their success this year for Florida State and their consecutive victories in the ACC. But this was a rivalry. You talk about the 90s when they were really hated rivals.
Oh, yeah. They're still hated rivals. They still hate each other. Excuse me, but it's obvious that the rivalry and the players have not been the same as a few years past.
Yeah, Brad, this is a year that Al Golden needs because they're coming off a terrible loss last week at Cincinnati, 34-23. They need this victory in the worst way for their coach because if they don't, this could be the beginning of the end of his career with the Hurricanes. But, yeah, I'm going with the Seminoles.
Yeah, I like the Seminoles in this one. Way too much offensive firepower here.
I like what they do in the very beginning of the game. They got the guy on the horse. He throws the flame arrow down.
That's Chief Seminole.
Yep.
I think it's either Chief Seminole or Chief Osceola.
It's really it's one of my favorite college traditions besides Rocky Top and many other and the Clemson Death Valley, entrance that they have. Unbelievable. Now you got the TCU Horned Frogs, number 2 in the nation, led by, I think, Heisman Trophy winner. Let's not even say favorite. I think he's going to be the bona fide winner, Trevon Boykin, going up against the Kansas State Wildcats that don't even know who their quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, Kansas State's been a real disappointment this season. I like TCU in this one.
It's gotten so bad because last week they had a converted receiver, Cody Cook, be their quarterback. Defensive tackle Will Geary even said, I'll volunteer to be their quarterback.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is for K-State. Yeah, TCU, and plus, did you see what they did to Texas last week?
Yes, I did. 25 years ago, that doesn't happen.
I know, but this time, the times, they are changing.
Times truly are changing. Who saw Texas Christian, especially basically being a bunch of nomads as far as being in a particular league? They go from the old Southwest Conference to Conference USA to the Western Athletic Conference to the Mountain West, and finally they found a secure home in the Big 12 where they have a real shot at the national championship playoff.
The Big 12 has got a lot of great teams, a lot of high-powered offensive teams that score like 50-plus points for the most part. Now, the Big 10 right here at the Big House in Ann Arbor, the Northwestern Wildcats, undefeated 5-0, headed to Ann Arbor to take on the Michigan Wolverines, 4-1 under first-year coach Jim Harbaugh.
And Michigan has really righted themselves ever since they lost that season opener at Utah. Now they need that one signature win in the Big Ten Conference to really give them a little bit more momentum going into the second half of the season. And I think they get it here. I think they beat Northwestern at home. Northwestern's coming off a big, big win of their own just last weekend.
Against Minnesota, they held them to 173 yards and no points.
Mm-hmm.
But Michigan has held the last two teams, Maryland and I believe, it was Maryland and BYU, to 0 points.
That's right.
In the last 2 weeks. These are the top two scoring offenses in the country going up against each other.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I'm going to go with Justin Jackson and the Northwestern Wildcats.
There you go.
With the big upset victory right there.
And probably the biggest game of the weekend. And who really saw this happening? It's in the Pac-12. California and Utah.
Both undefeated. They're two,
in conference play, that is.
Well, overall.
And overall.
They're two of 20 teams that are still undefeated heading into the sixth week of college football.
It's a shame that they had to make that game a 10 o'clock game, because that means there's not going to be a lot of people that's going to be staying up to watch it. I'm going to try and catch that game, but a 10 o'clock Eastern time start and an 8 o'clock Mountain time start. Still got one of the best offenses in the country in Utah going up against a Cal squad that's got something really interesting going at quarterback.
And not only that, they give up this year, their points per game giving up and yards per game have improved since last year. This year, they give up 23.4, 386.8. Last year, it was 39.8 points and 511.8 yards. Definitely market improvement.
And California has Jared Goff as their quarterback. He's played well so far, but now he's got his first real test.
Yeah, 70.2% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions in 178 attempts. He averages 326 yards a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's a heck of an improvement. This is a guy who's definitely going to be looked at for the NFL draft. But you got Devonta Booker, the running back for Utah, 106 rushing attempts, 4 touchdowns, 15 receptions, and even a TD pass against Oregon. But the 106 rushing attempts overall, amazing. But Jared Goff, despite the fact that they won last week, he got sacked 7 times by Washington State. I think Utah could take advantage of that.
There you go.
I'm going with the Utes.
Yeah, I like Utah in this one. Just a little bit too much firepower offensively, which is saying a lot considering the strength of these two teams is their offense.
Do you know that tomorrow, 9 o'clock ESPN, you know they do their annual college game day show? For the first time ever, they're going to be in Salt Lake City.
That's good.
That's amazing right there. Because, they usually go to the other cities and towns.
Yeah, they almost always go to the real college towns like
Austin sometimes.
Austin and Ann Arbor and Columbus and Gainesville or Tallahassee.
They once went, sometimes they'll even go to where North Dakota State is. One week they usually do. But this is the first time they're in Salt Lake City. That's unbelievable for this organization. They have a real Polynesian influence, in fact, on this team.
They've recruited so well in the state of California, which has a Polynesian influence, specifically Southern California, and also the state of Hawaii as well, and even American Samoa and Tonga. American Samoa has really developed a really good football program there, to the point where a lot of their guys make their way to the college game and also to the NFL.
Like Troy Polamalu, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Who definitely will be a Hall of Famer one day in his own right. Deserves to be one of the greatest safeties ever in NFL history. Now, what game this week are you looking forward to?
Well, in addition to the Giants game, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when the Cowboys have a big, big test coming up against the Patriots. They're going to be at home, and they're coming off an embarrassing loss. Can they bounce back to try and make something out of what's left of their time left until Tony Romo arrives? No.
It's really going to be a tough game for Dallas, definitely to overcome without their star quarterback. Brandon Weeden needs to win desperately in this game. Otherwise, we may be seeing Matt Castle if things don't go right. Mm-hmm. As for my game, I'm looking forward to Cincinnati-Seattle. Seattle's been on a tear ever since Cam Chancellor returned. I want to see what that secondary does against the likes of Andy Dalton. That's going to be the true test in the matchup, and how they defend the run against Jeremy Hill. Well, Jamie, always a pleasure doing the show with you.
Always a
week.
pleasure doing the show with you, man.
We'll see you here next week on Friday, October 16th, for yet another week of your favorite 1-hour NFL
Take us home, man.
and college football show, The Blitz Zone. Coming to you always live from Studio B in Staten Island, right here on CTV. See you here next week, folks.
Good night, everyone.
Peace. Yahtzee.